Hello everyone, it's Mark here, and what I'm showing you here is a quick kind of a rough idea of what a structure would look like out in Long Island Sound. This isn't a particular structure that's out there now. This is just kind of for show you as a sample. There's probably 50 locations like this within Long Island Sound that are structures that these are usually where we fish in the summertime. There's all kinds of different ways to fish for striped bass and bluefish, but this isn't necessarily the way that we do it throughout the year. But usually it's a summertime event. And the reason I'm kind of showing you this demonstration is we've had a lot of people ask us, what are we doing, or how are we doing our fishing? So this is a quick example of one way that we go about how we look for fish and how we fish the structure. So this would be some kind of a typical reef that's out in Long Island Sound. We got a structure may come up 50, 60, 40 feet. In this particular case, we did 40 feet. And this structure comes up to about 20 feet with all kinds of different rocks and reefs and structure in this particular area. So what we'll do is, in this case, I'm showing the tide going this direction. I'm not going to factor in wind yet into this equation at first. And then what we do is we'll set up the boat. I'm going to use this Thunderbird as my boat. And let's say that I want to search for fish in this area within these rocks or structure that's here. What we'll do is we'll set up the boat to go into a drift, and then just let the tide take us back. Now let's just say if the tide were going this way, this is what we would do. And as we're drifting, we're basically gonna start making our casts out this way, so that as we drift back, we're going to go back into the structure to make our presentation to the fish. Now the fish may be running anywhere up and down this reef. Some are kind of cruising and just looking food for, like, say up in here, or they may set up, usually your bigger fish will set up as ambush points. These are good areas that they'll set up as ambush points, kind of like what trout would do, setting up either in front of rock structure or behind rock structure. They could be anywhere. Now what's nice is if you got fish that are coming up and breaking the surface, obviously it's easier to find them. Me personally, I don't like it when there's a lot of fish coming up, because when there's a lot of fish coming up and pushing bait, that means it attracts birds. Birds attract boats. So I'm always looking for structures where there's usually not birds there. Don't get me wrong, I do fish under birds, but I try to find areas so that I can find fish when there's not birds in the area. This way I don't attract more boats, and it's a lot easier to fish this structure. Because if you get into situations, I'm going to act as if we wanted to fish for this structure here. If I've got wind coming at me this direction, and it's a good wind, whatever it may be, and my boat doesn't have a lot of draft on it, it only has like 11-inch draft, my boat actually gets pushed pretty hard by the wind, more than it would the tide. So if I wanted to fish were coming up in this area, if I were to hit this, I'd have to set up my drift over here, and then I'd kind of gauge it so that I went right through this area without hitting these rocks, because these rocks in this example are actually out of the water. So that's how we kind of do that. Or maybe I would do it this way, is I'd probably fish it from this side, come set up the boat here so that I drift casting in and then missing the whole area while also avoiding that rock. So it gets very challenging. Sometimes I've made the statement, I've caught myself, listened to myself in the boat, and I'm like, that was exhausting. It's more not a physical thing, it's a mental thing, making sure that you're keeping yourself safe, that you're not hitting these structures, because I'm looking for the nastiest stuff out there that I can get the boat into without obviously hurting anybody or myself, or putting the boat on a rock. The other thing I want to talk about too is, when I do find these fish, let's say these fish are using this structure and I'm setting up my drift, I'm avoiding these rocks to start to hit them. I also try to avoid putting the boat over the fish too. So what we usually do is, if we drift, we're drifting across the structure like this, and then after we're done, hopefully we've caught 1 or 2 fish somewhere in this area, and then what we'll do is I drive the boat up and around. I never come back up over the fish. I go up and around and then reset up my drift over here. So sometimes you've seen us maybe in the boat, you'll see that I have the line out like I'm doing a troll. Well, that's what I'm doing. And I'll set up the troll, I'll gun it up and around and over, and then I'll drop the lines out this way. And as the boat comes back around and starts to drift, I'm dropping that line into those fish, kind of like a little bit of a troll, and then I'll start stripping the line in, bringing the fish, and then start casting back into them. So I'm not a big fan of I see a lot of guys coming out there and they'll kind of plant the boat right here or leave it in gear right here. I'm not a big fan of that. My thought process is if you were sitting down for dinner and somebody fired up a lawnmower over your head, are you gonna sit there and try to eat dinner while you're listening to that? The fish are gonna move. So if that boat's sitting there, you might catch one fish right away, but your chances of catching more than that are gonna go down because the fish are gonna get irritated by you sitting there. You're disrupting the bait, you're disrupting everything. So keep yourself out of there, stay up in here if that's something maybe you wanna do, and then cast in, troll, whatever you wanna do. That would probably be the better way to do it. So hopefully that makes sense on what we're doing. I know it's hard to see it, but this is kind of the big picture of what's going on when we're managing the boat and catching those stripers. Hope this helps, and thanks for watching.